very happy to be live with Alistair Liddle, who writes as A J Liddle.
Yeah.
Do you want to start off with an introduction for yourself and your books?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Alistair Liddle. I write under the pen name of A J Liddle because Alistair Liddle's a bit of a mouthful. So, I've just finished and published my third book, which is called No Rules Apply. It's the third in a series featuring my Republic of Georgian detective, Lieutenant Ramaz Danatsi. You're probably asking why I write about Georgia, and the reason I do that is because part of my career working in oil and gas, I had 15 years, the last 15 years of my working life in the Republic of Georgia. So I know the country pretty well, and I thought it's when I decided I was going to write books, I thought, well, I'll make them a little bit different. Most people haven't been to Georgia. Most people aren't likely to go to Georgia, so it's just a little bit different culturally, and people are a little bit different. Crime's a bit different, so I thought it would be interesting for readers to read about that, as well as to enjoy the type of genre which I tried to write, which are kind of fast-paced page turners, books I like to read myself. That's what I aim for.
I have to say, reading your books makes me want to visit Georgia, though.
Well, that's good. That's what I would like to happen if people are able to visit Georgia. That'd be absolutely fantastic, because it is a great country and the people are lovely. And I think it's a time to go is about now if you can go, because I think within a few years it'll probably be spoiled with tourism, as lots of places are. They're a bit innocent at the moment, and it's a good time to visit. But it will change probably. Everywhere seems to be on the tourist map nowadays.
Where else have you lived and worked then, if you were in the oil industry?
Well, I was also in the Merchant Navy, so I had 15 years in the Merchant Navy, and so I went everywhere basically, but mainly the Far East, but also North and South America, the Middle East, Russia. I've been most places in my time in the Merchant Navy, and then working in oil and gas. I moved around the UK quite a lot, so I went initially to Newcastle Airport. I was the manager of the Air BP terminal there. You'll have seen these vehicles that drive up underneath the aircraft and fill them up with jet A1 fuel. That was my job. I managed that operation at Newcastle. And then I went to Sullom where I worked in Shetland for 5 years, loading crude tankers. Then I had a job in commercial. I went out of operations to work in commercial, and but eventually back to Scotland, working at Hound Point Marine Terminal, which was part of the Forties pipeline system, exporting crude oil. But then 15 years in Georgia, where I was operations manager. So I used to run 3 pipelines in a terminal in Tbilisi. So I got around. I've been around a fair bit.
You have? Do you speak much Georgian? You've got bits of the language in the book, haven't you? So I'm trying to work out how fluent you are in it.
I'm not fluent, and it's a source of embarrassment for me, because Georgian's a very difficult language. Most expats really struggle with it. I certainly did. That's a bit of an excuse. I could have made more effort. All I can really say is a few pleasantries, the sort of things you find in the book. Gamar Joba, which means hello, and Gamar Jos, which is cheers, and Didi Ludi, which is 2 beers, please. So just very basic stuff. But I was lucky in as much that working for BP, English language was language spoken. Plus, it was because we operated across 3 countries which spoke different languages. English was the language of operations. So the guys in operations had to speak English as well. So it was lucky for me.
In your books, like across all of them, there's quite a thread of like kind of underlying corruption, like across a lot of the big agencies, and sometimes Ramaz gets frustrated by the fact that he like he can't do things, can he? Like he can't execute warrants or he can't do something, he's got to go a different way around. Is that
Yeah.
a thing that is actually an issue in the country or
Yes. Georgia used to be one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's made a lot of improvements, and it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's more subtle now. It used to be very blatant. You used to get flagged down by the traffic police every 3 or 4 kilometers, and all they wanted was a few lari, which is the currency over there, and you're on your way again. But you could get away with anything, literally murder. You could get away with murder uh, if you were prepared to pay your way out of it. Driving, you just bought your driving license. So it was one of the most corrupt countries in the world. But following the Rose Revolution in 2003, things improved a lot. But the corruption's a bit more subtle now. It's not so obvious. You wouldn't see it as a visitor, but it's still there.
yeah, what I like about your character is he gets frustrated, doesn't he? With
Yeah,
that, he kind of wants to slice through the corruption. He wants to just do things.
yeah. He wants to get the job done, doesn't he? And
Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't always do him a lot of favors that he won't
no,
go along with the
he gets him into trouble.
does. But I think that's kind of part of his charm, isn't it? He can't manage to get through an investigation without getting into trouble a little bit.
Yeah. Well, he's a guy you would want him on your side. If you were in a bit of spot of trouble, you would want him on your side. And there's certain types of crime which excite him. And that's kind of without giving away spoilers. It's to do with his family history, which reflects the recent tragic history in Georgia. The Nazis' family was caught up in that, and it kind of drives them to behave in a certain way when certain types of crime are committed. It makes them very defensive of women, essentially, and that's kind of one of the things that drives them.
So obviously, you've had that experience of living there a long time, which means you'll know the country really well, even as an outsider.
Yeah.
But when you're presenting the books and you're sort of trying to reflect it to other people, did you still have to go away and learn about like the history of
I,
things and like procedures
yeah.
and stuff and how they did things?
Well, with in 15 years, you learn quite a lot. I lived in the community. I had an apartment in the same street where Ramaz the Nazi lives. Funnily enough, Kandalaki Street, and uh, so that's where my apartment was. And so I lived in the community, and I went through a lot while I was in Georgia. I was there for the Rose Revolution um, when the president was overturned, and I was there for the war in 2008 with Russia. So I've been through quite a lot there, and I learned a lot. So most of what I write, I know about. Certainly, but getting it right's important. And culturally, the culture's different there. They've got different traditions, and usually I get it right because I know about it. Like I've been to several Georgian weddings, funerals, so I know how it happens. But I've got a couple of Georgian friends who I always run stuff by them, and they tell me, "Yeah, well, that you've got that right," or "No, that's not quite the way it would happen in Georgia. A Georgian wouldn't quite think that way or act that way." So I have to rewrite it. But most of the time, I get it right. I have to say because I know the place. And I certainly know all the places are all real. All the places I mentioned in the book are real, and I've been to most of them. So yeah, it's a benefit of having lived for so long in the one place.
Does it give you a bit of freedom in writing as well, though? Because obviously you're writing about this place that not many people have been to, so you could. I mean, I believe that you have written it as accurately as you could because
Yeah, I understand your question. It's a
yeah,
good, it's a good
you could
question.
kind of almost be like, well, it's just how they do things. You know what I mean? And
Right.
most people would be like, yeah,
Yeah, who would know?
yeah.
No, but you're right, but I would know, and it's important to me, and the book is read by Georgians as well, and I would hate to disappoint them because they come back to me and say, "Yeah, you got that really." Some of them are actually amazed that me, a Scotsman, can write about their country and get it right. It does end up right because as I said, even though I get it wrong sometimes, my Georgian friends correct me, and it has to get past them. But authenticity is important for me, so I don't think the books would be as worthwhile if it was just made up.
No, they. I don't believe you do make them up.
Yeah.
By the way, I was
No,
just
I know. It was a great question.
you could have like it's like if you're making stuff, sort of somewhere like in the near future or something. You could almost because people don't know it as well. You could be,
Yeah, tell me I'm wrong.
you're
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit wrong, and it wouldn't matter as much. Like when someone writes a full police procedural over here, people have read so many of them. They'd be like, "No, you haven't got that right." Like,
yeah.
yeah.
No, well, yeah. So speaking of police procedural, so one of my Georgian friends who advises me is he was ex police and ex KGB actually, because if you go back far enough, all the police were in the KGB. Uh, so he kind of advises me on police and security matters, Sandro. Uh, so yeah, that would be right. The police stuff would be right. So it's
Well, that must
proper.
be a really interesting thing for how it's changed as well, because again, if you're comparing it to sort of our history of policing, we've got go back such a long way. If theirs was KGB for a long time and then changed to
Yeah,
policing, they've almost got to come up with a new set of ways,
they,
haven't they?
they do. They do. And the justice system generally in Georgia, they're not quite there yet. The policing's pretty much how Rebus would recognise it. It's not that much different, but the actual justice system has got some flaws in it, and it's actually holding the country back at the moment. It's Georgia applied for candidate status for the EU. That means you're in a waiting list to join EU, but they weren't able to get that because some flaws in the actual justice system. But that's the courts and the way that the judges operate. It's not as transparent and as open as it should be.
Well, there's a comment in this one, isn't there, about I'm trying not to give a spoiler, but about the prisons
Yeah,
and that, they'd sort of had to change because
that's right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. There's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I used to come up against that in my work. You'd come across Georgian officials who still behaved the way that they used to behave in the times of the Soviet Union. In other words, they thought they could just tell you what to do and you would do it. Uh, they were really struggling to realise that times had changed, and they had to comply with the Georgian law, the Georgian constitution, and international law. But they weren't used to that because in Soviet times you had a lot of authority and people would just do as they were told. But that's not the way it works anymore.
Laura's asked a question. We've got a few people who said hello.
Oh, hi,
Um,
hi, everyone.
Laura's asked a question, and you kind of already touched on it in this book. She's asked you if the current Russian situation, Ukraine war, would affect your storyline in the future. But you've mentioned it in this current
Yeah, yeah. Actually,
movie.
that's a good question. Actually, I'm glad you asked that because so yeah, there are a few references to the war in Ukraine, and the reason for that is that Georgia was at war with Russia in 2008, and it's, the situation in Ukraine now is very worrying for Georgians because their fear was that if Ukraine had been rolled over by the Russians, as the Russians expected very quickly, then Russia would then set its sights on possibly Georgia because they had a go already and they didn't fully succeed. But other countries as well, which are former Soviet republics, like possibly Azerbaijan and other countries. So the Georgians live with that fear now. Now, this is why I'm glad you asked the question because people who have read and reviewed my book, a couple of them said maybe you shouldn't have made mention of Ukraine because it sets your book, it dates your book. Maybe in 5 years' time, it's a bit like COVID. In 5 years' time, people will say, "Well, what was that about?" But I thought it was too important because it would be unnatural for people in Georgia in my book not to be talking about the Ukraine situation because it's very much on their minds. It concerns them and they're worried about it. So for me, it was only right. And if it dates the book, then so be it. But that's the way I thought I should go.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is that about dating the book by referring to kind of current events. But then I also think it's like with COVID, it's kind of we can't not talk about
It
these
happens.
things
It
because
happens.
they're happening.
Yeah,
And if your book is set in current times, you need to talk about current events, and people aren't going to forget what these are.
yeah. I think it'd be very unnatural not to mention that. There was a lot of advice at the time. Don't write the great COVID novel because somebody else will do it and it'll be better than you. But I think it's wrong to just ignore the fact that such a momentous event happened, and it's the same for Georgians. What's going on in Ukraine? That's momentous for them.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're right. They're talking about it, aren't they? Because it's in the news, and you've got people in your books that have got ties to Ukraine, so they would talk about what is happening. It does make sense. It fits the story
Yep. Yep.
that you're telling. Um,
I'm glad you agree with that because that's certainly the way I saw it. And yeah,
and you've not done it in any, you've reflected it in sort of that character's views,
yeah,
which it makes sense. You've made Ramaz has gone on quite a journey, hasn't he, over the course of the books.
yeah. Over the 3 books, yes, he has.
And with the kind of so has his entire like police kind of station, haven't they? They've all grown over the books.
Yeah, yeah. They've all developed his character, something, and yeah, that's good. It's the characters seem to develop of their own uh, volition. It's strange, isn't it? But I've heard other authors say that when they write a book, the characters just develop themselves. They change with times and circumstances, and the writing reflects that. And I think that's certainly the case with the Nazis. I think he's. Would you agree? He's more of a rounded character now. He's a bit more mellow. Some things in his life are going okay.
He is, but I think he's also learning from like events that are going on around him, isn't
Yeah,
he? He's growing with the books. Like you said, he's mellowing because something's going okay. Um, but yeah, he's kind of learned to play a bit of the game as well.
yeah, that's right.
He's
Yeah,
never
he's
going to
not.
be good at it, but he's
Yeah, yeah, he's not so bullheaded, is he? He's a bit more subtle in his approach,
yeah, but in a good way.
in a good way.
Alan Martin has said, "How conscious, proud are Georgians of their history?"
Exceptionally, they're very patriotic. Their country's very old. It's an ancient culture, and they're very proud of it. They've remained independent for centuries now. Well, it's obviously the time of the Soviet Republic they weren't independent, but they've maintained their identity and their culture. That's probably a better way of saying it. They've been surrounded by aggressors. You know, but over the centuries, they've maintained pretty much their way of life and their way of doing things. So they are very proud. They remind me a little bit of Scotland actually, because uh, similar size of population. There's 4 million people live in Georgia, 5 million people in Scotland, and Scots are very patriotic, sometimes to an extreme. Uh, but yeah, so they're a bit like the Scots, I think, in that respect. Good question, Alan. Thank you.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before because you've got your 3 books in now, and I don't want you to start. Don't take this as I want you to stop writing them anytime soon because they're brilliant books. But how many do you think you will write?
It's a good question, that isn't it? But I've I've written 3, and the books are all up on the wall and they're framed. I've put this on Facebook. Some people might have seen it. It's actually my wife's way of motivating me. When I first said I was going to write a book, she said, "You'll have to write 3." And she put 3 frames on the wall, 1, 2, 3. And as the books have been published, she's filled it. But a couple of days ago, after I'd published the third book, I got up in the morning and she'd put a fourth frame up. Maybe I can just show you actually.
Is that the one behind you?
Oh, that's not very good, is it? Nah. Sorry, I'll not do that. It's too difficult. But anyway, there's three frames with my three books, and there's a fourth one beside it with a big question mark. So, so I'm not getting a moment's peace. I've got to write the next one. But I do want to write another the Nazi book, but and I think that's what I'm going to do next. But I'm definitely going to write something different. What I decided it today actually was I'm going to start writing the fourth Nazi book within the next few days. But at the same time, I'm going to research my next book, which will be totally different. It won't be in Georgia, and it might not necessarily be crime. So so I'm going to do the research as well as write the Nazi.
You can't drop this on us and not tell us what you think the next book might be about.
Well, it's early days yet, but well, you should don't do it. But it's something about. I'm thinking it's something to do with the undercover police or agent, special branch, or something like that. It's just ideas going around my head at the moment, but that's what I'm thinking.
So once you've finished book 4, do you think that would be it for you and Georgia, or
No,
would you be tempted to go back and write? Because there are other characters, aren't there, in your police station that even if you finish with Ramaz, I think you could do
yeah. Well,
something.
that's right. I mean, I think I could certainly write more Nazi books because if you think of some of the very successful books series, like people like the Harry Bosch books, which is one of my favourites, Michael Connolly, I think he's written 20 odd. So not to say I would write 20, but there's probably room for a few more if I choose to do that, and I think I probably would. So I don't really have an end number in mind, but I'd only write them as long as I felt they were still worth reading. I wouldn't want to just turn it into some kind of production line because people have got an interest in them and they'll buy them regardless. So I'd like them still to be satisfy my requirements, which is they've got to be a decent read and something which is worthwhile.
We got plenty of wall space from what we
Yeah,
saw.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think they're excellent books. The
Oh,
3
thank
so far have been great, and there's definitely scope for more. I would read more.
you. Okay, thank you. That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're one of those treats of a book, if you know what I mean. They're like, because you bring them out, they come out very often, do they? Like, are they like yearly at the moment?
Yeah, it's been yearly on average, yes.
So you just every so often you get, oh, there's a new one, and then
Yeah,
you can go and have a
yeah.
little holiday in Georgia.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm glad you enjoy them because I know you read a lot of books, and I'm sure you don't enjoy them all. So I'm really glad that you like the Nazi books.
I do. I think because he develops, and you got that set of characters around him that develop as well, haven't you? And there's new ones coming
Yeah.
in all the time, and you kind of then you become invested in even in like how his mum's doing.
Hmm.
As daft as that sounds, you
No,
kind of
yeah,
need to go back and find out how everybody is
yeah. Well,
getting on.
there's a character who appears in 3 books. It's kind of the Nazi's friend and mentor, old KGB policeman, Levan Glavelli, and a few people have said to me they would like to read a book about Levan Glavelli. His time in the police and the KGB as well. And because he turns out he's quite an interesting character for people.
He is. I would read that. I also like Ramaz's sidekick
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of.
Kelly. Yeah,
Yeah, I would read something about
yeah,
her as well. She's definitely got.
yeah. I like her as a character myself. I think she's pretty sassy, isn't she? But she keeps the Nazi in his place.
She does, but she's not afraid to keep him in his place either, which is quite good.
Yeah, yeah. They've got a good relationship, haven't they?
A really good relationship. This may be Alan again. Yes, it is. He says, "Do you get ideas from current events and personalities?"
Uh, well, Not specifically. I kind of think of a big theme and try to think, could I write, would that be applicable to Georgia? And certainly this most recent book, that's very, very applicable. And I don't really want to give too much away, but it's certainly very plausible. The storyline, I think you'd agree with that, Caroline. The plot's quite plausible, I would say, and
Yeah,
it's
very
probably
plausible.
yeah,
Very, very plausible, but almost in any country, I think it would be
yeah,
plausible, but especially with the time that you're writing it in, I
yeah,
feel like it is.
yeah.
And not where I thought it was going from the beginning as well, which is good.
No, that's good. Then, yeah. So I fooled you.
To be honest, I'm very bad at working out where things are going, so
No,
but yeah, it wasn't, took me in an unexpected direction.
no, that's good then.
Also, Alan, no, this is Sarah Blackburn. I nearly gave credit to someone else. She said, "What location is your favourite in Georgia?"
Oh, what location? Well, I was quite lucky that I travelled all over Georgia because we had three pipelines and a terminal which I had to visit as operations manager. So I was also lucky I could fly around in a helicopter, which was great. So I could cover a lot of territory, and I would say the place I feel most affectionate towards was where the place I first started working in Georgia, which was on the Black Sea coast. It was in a terminal called Supsa Terminal, and that's the great people there, and it's a bit of a holiday resort actually, mainly for Georgians, but the Russians used to go there as well in the days of the Soviet Union. A lot of them had their dachas there. So that's a lovely place, and the people are very nice there. So I would guess that's probably my favourite place. But if you were to visit Georgia as a tourist, you would spend most of your time in Tbilisi. Tbilisi is the capital city, is a very interesting old city. You know, it's very cosmopolitan now. You know, it's a great place just to chill in a summer's evening, stroll through the old town, and have a nice glass of Georgian wine and some Georgian food, and just taking the vibes. It's lovely, lovely place. And of course, all the old cathedrals and churches and all the history there. So yeah, but certainly Tbilisi would be the place you would probably spend most of your time.
The Black Sea coast is lovely, though, isn't it? It's
Yeah, yeah. There's a big development there now. It's the town of Batumi. A lot of cruise liners go in there, but people describe it as Dubai, being a bit like Dubai, which to me isn't a compliment, to be quite honest. But I don't like Batumi that much, but the rest of the coast is really lovely.
this is Alan. He says Georgian wine is very good. We get lots of it in Estonia.
All right. Well, yeah, yeah. So Georgia used to supply all of the USSR with their wines, and the wines are excellent. And here's a little known fact for you: is that Georgia actually invented wine. Now, you might think that's nonsense, but I've been to Bordeaux and to Rioja and had a holiday in France recently, and we visited some vineyards. And I spoke to the people there, and I said, "I used to work in Georgia. Were you aware that Georgia invented wine?" And they said, "Yeah, that's right." Yeah. So they admitted it. It's 8,000 years ago, and the reason they know it was 8,000 years ago was they found one of these queries, which is a big clay pot that they used to put all the juice and the pips and everything in and bury it for temperature control. But they found one of these things, unearthed it, and they carbon dated the sediment that was in the bottom, and it was carbon dated to 8,000 years ago. So currently, that's the oldest known wine production in the world. It may be that some country they'll find evidence that was done before then, but currently 8,000 years. So the Georgian wine is excellent, and it's little known. It's good that Alan gets an opportunity to drink it in Estonia. Uh, what's your favourite, Alan? Mine. I drink Bucasani and Sisindali, which are also the Nazis' favourites.
Yeah, I'm imagining you sitting back to write and opening a bottle of it,
Yeah.
having a glass as you write. Does that help you get into his mind?
Yeah, well, we've actually got some Georgian wine downstairs. We bought it for an event which we ran locally. So I've got a couple of bottles left over, which I'm hanging on to. Yeah,
Alan says Alan says
Alan,
I can't remember.
oh, they must have drunk too much of it.
So, if they obviously they've been very, is it easy to import Georgian wine?
Not really. The when I was getting some for this event, I ordered it online, but I had to go to Paris to get the Mukasani. Believe it or not, I got some of the white wine, the Sisindali in Glasgow, but Paris for the red Mukasani. I don't really understand why it's not promoted and sold more readily, because people are interested in wine now, and the backstory about Georgia inventing wine, and they've got so many different varieties, and it is a little bit different from uh, you know what you would find from Western Europe. It's certainly worth discovering.
Sarah says she remembered Levinson Wood did a book and a TV show that mentioned the wine.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. I like it.
Do you think Ramaz being a family man now is part of what's happened him?
Yeah, he's definitely he's infatuated with his little girl, isn't he? But again, that kind of partly ties in, I think, to his family history, But yeah, the little girl means so much to them, as you get to find out in the books. So yes, he's definitely a family man.
Yeah, I think because he has been softer, hasn't he? He's
Yeah,
developed. I'm trying to think of questions I can ask you without giving away spoilers, because I'm 3 books and I'm aware that some people who are watching
yeah,
might be starting a journey, so I'm trying not to give
no, that's right. Yeah, no
too much
spoilers.
away. You've picked quite a big theme for the crime in this book, and it does tie in some of the like people and events from other ones, doesn't it? Do you have ideas what would happen in book 4? Do you have any other things you'd like to
Yeah,
target? Or
yeah, I do, but I haven't really sort of come down on it definitely yet, because there's some big crime themes out there, but you've got to think, is there a story in that, to make it, could you actually, without padding it, because I really don't want to pad a book out. I want it all to be, uh, what's the word? I don't want to pad it anyway. I don't want it just to be writing words for the sake of words. I want them to be stuff that people are going to enjoy. So yeah, so I've got a few thoughts about what I could base the next book on, but I haven't really come to any firm conclusions yet.
so we talked about you before we came online. We talked about the fact that you did an event with the CWA, the
Yeah.
launch of this book. You've been at Shetland Noir,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is just jealousy inducing if you can't go, but looks amazing. It's on my bucket list of festivals to go to now.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Uh, but what other events have you got planned?
Well, I've actually been invited to go to the next one is Butte Noir on the island of Butte. So it's not quite so remote as well, it's nothing like as remote as Shetland, but it's a nice little island all the same. So that's the beginning of August. So that's my next book festival. I'm on a panel there as well. A guy called Craig Robertson. Do you know Craig? Craig's he's hosting my panel. So that's nice. So we'll probably take a couple of days, go on the panel and spend Jackie, my wife and I we'll have a couple of nights there as well and enjoy Butte.
That sounds nice. Are
Mm.
you going to, because you've got a bit of a history of bloody Scotland, haven't you? Been on the
Yeah,
different
yeah,
prides
that's yeah,
there?
bloody,
Or
yes. Sorry that I interrupted you. Uh, yeah, my first book, No Harm Done, was shortlisted for the Bloody Scotland debut prize in 21. Did I say that? So that was a big thrill for me. And Bloody Scotland's running again in September, and just a couple of days ago, actually, there was a launch which I was invited to, and so it looks like a pretty exciting lineup of authors and various events which run. It's a fantastic. Have you been to Caroline? Have you been to bloody Scotland?
I haven't, but we tend to interview the debut and the McIlvenney
Ah, yeah,
prize authors every year, and it is one of those like I don't know how you feel about literary prizes, but there are some like the book prize where I'm never sure if I'm gonna like the book or not. Whereas like the McIlvenney and the debut prize, do tend to pick. Like I look at the list and go, I don't know how you're gonna pick a winner from these.
yeah,
Like there's often books that I've read on there that I go, this is really good. Like I
yeah,
know this book is really good.
yeah. No, I think I agree, and I think it's a great book festival. There's just so much going on, and it's very well supported. It's got some really big names. Like Stephen King's attended in the past, David Baldacci. Some of the biggest writers in the world. They've turned up for it, so it shows you the kind of reputation that it has.
I'd want to sneak out of work if I went though, because I want to go to the torchlit procession.
Ah, well, yeah. I've not done that, but yeah, I think that'd be great fun. Walking down the castle esplanade and carrying your torch, and that'd be great fun, wouldn't it?
It does look like a lot of fun, doesn't it? When you see people doing it, you're like, I want to go to that. That looks really good.
Mhm.
What have you, when we're on the subject of prizes and things, what have you read this year that you've really enjoyed?
Right. So the book I'm reading at the moment, I think is exceptional. It's called I'm not quite finished it, but it's called the Secrets of Water. The Sweetness of Water, and it's by I should have. I'm terrible with names. It's Nathan. Was it Nathan Carter? I should check that. I should have known that because. But anyway, it's a fantastic book. It's set just after the end of the American Civil War, and it seems to feature uh, five main characters, two emancipated slaves, and three members of the same family. One of whom is the son who comes back from the American Civil War on the Confederate side. They thought he was dead, but turns out he wasn't. That's a spoiler, I think. But that's a very well written book. I was saying to Caroline earlier that I'm a slow reader because what I do is if I read something I really like or something which I don't think works so well, I'll go back and read it again and again. So it really slows me down. Uh, so that's the case with this book. It's so well written. My wife just brought through my Kindle here to tell me.
It's Nathan Harris.
Nathan Harris. Did you know that book already?
No, someone's posted
Ah,
this.
Nathan Harris. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, tremendous book. Recommend it.
Do you read more than one book at a time, or do you just read one book at a time?
Uh, just the one that's about all I can focus on because I lose track of the characters and because I'm quite a slow reader, I have to really get into a book, and establish where I am in it. Otherwise, I kind of lose track of who the characters are and what their names are.
Nice. I have to admit, I'm a bit of a multiple book at a time reader.
Well, I think it's a gift, but I don't think I could do that. I wish I could because it'd be useful for someone who's aspiring to write themselves, to be able to do that.
Alan wants to know what you read when you were younger.
What was that? Sorry.
Alan wants to know what you read when you were younger.
Yeah, well, Alan's got some great questions. So the books which first got me interested, actually, I think I read the famous five and all that sort of stuff, but as adult books, which I started reading probably as a young teenager, were the James Bond books written by Ian Fleming, and they're much different from the films. But the characters pretty much describes Sean Connery. So Sean Connery was the perfect shoe-in for these movies. But I used to love them. I used to buy them from there's a book exchange. I don't know if people remember book exchanges. I don't think you have them anymore. But you brought your old book in and you were given something for it, and then you were able to buy a second hand book for a bit more. So the bookshop made a bit of money, and but you could recycle your books. So that's quite good. So I used to buying them with my pocket money. I used to go along to the book exchange, and that's what really started me on it, the Ian Fleming books.
Alan, followed up is, what did you read when you were younger? Did they influence you?
Not, I wouldn't have said the Ian Fleming Bond books influenced me. They were good. They were good books, well written and exciting, and all the stuff you expect from James Bond. But the sort of books that really inspire me at the moment, I think I mentioned the Harry Bosch books before. I think Michael Connelly is a fantastic writer. Police procedural stuff. So it's Harry Bosch and it's a Lincoln lawyer, Mickey Haler character, and he's written some other stuff as well. But I just look forward to his next book coming out. I think he's got one coming out September or October. But I look forward to it. Buy it right away, and usually have it read within 2 or 3 days, even though I'm a slow reader.
And they're not thin books either, are they? Most of Michael
No, they're a decent size, but they're very engrossing.
November 23 is when his next book's out.
Was it November? Okay, great. Yeah. The other books I used to read a lot of, but I've stopped reading them now because I think they've gone off the boil. Are the Reacher books that these were really they're real page turners. No, Lee Child's Jack Reacher books. I used to read them really quickly as well for me, but the last couple I read written by Lee Child on his own, I wasn't too convinced, and then he writes with his brother now, and I haven't even attempted them because people tell me they're not quite as good as Reacher books used to be.
I may get my author interviewer card revoked here, but I've seen about 1.5 James Bond movies and read all his books, and I've read 0 Reacher books.
Right, okay. Yeah, you probably like Reacher books actually, but
I'm not a big thriller fan.
Okay. What? Okay.
I tend to lean towards like cozy kind of crime,
right,
things like that. That's why I don't watch James Bond movies. Not a fan.
Yeah.
But seen 1.5 because I watched one, and then half of one because it was set in Istanbul, and my parents used to live there, and we were spotting places we'd been while it was on there. Then we turned it off. I can see the appeal for them, if you know what I mean. I guess I've not got around, and then now I read for these almost exclusively.
Yeah.
So unless we get Lee Child on, probably not going to read one of his books. Again, he has been with us actually, but why?
Yeah. I don't know how many Reacher books have been written now, but there must be I don't know. I'm guessing getting on for 30, maybe 25. 30. It's a lot of books, but so I've read most of them, but just the last few I haven't really been so convinced.
How do you think, because you were saying this earlier, you said there's scope for more Ramar's books, isn't it? But you want to keep them so that they're thrilling, say something, meaningful.
Yeah.
How do you know as an author, or how do you think you'll know, because you're not at that point yet? How do you think you'll know when it's time to finish? Some people kind of set a number, don't they? And say, like, I know Ellie Griffith said she was going to write so many of the Ruth Galloway books. And then when she got to that number, she stopped. And some people don't know and just carry on, and maybe carry on beyond where the series could.
Yeah.
How do you think you know when it's the time to end?
Yeah. It's a good question actually, because this bloody Scotland event we were at the other day there, it was a writing duo, Chris Brookmeyer and his wife Marissa. I've forgotten her surname, but they write the books together now under their pen name of Ambrose Parry or Perry. But they're writing books which are based around James Simpson's home, the guy who discovered chloroform. And when he was asked by his publishers how many books were you going to write, and I think he said something 3, but he didn't know. But he's now just published his 4th, and so and he thinks it's still fresh. He thinks there's still more books to write. So it's difficult to know, but I think I would know if the feedback started to come back that it's getting a bit formulaic. okay, it's not really adding much to what I wrote last. So I think it'd be the feedback that would advise me that my time had come to wind them up.
You wouldn't be you getting kind of fed up with the characters?
I,
Because you
I,
must live with them for quite a while as you're writing them. Do you ever get, like, annoyed by any of them? Do you ever think, like,
get annoyed by some. Well, I suppose the Nazi himself's quite an annoying character, isn't he? You say, "But why are you doing that, you fool?" That's what he does. I, I think I think I like all my characters, apart from the evil ones, of course. But I think all the guys on the good side, the good guys, I think I like them all. They've all got their own characteristics and way of doing things and the way they interact with each other. But I think I like them. And maybe I like them because that's the way I write them. I write them to be essentially likable people because they're on the right side.
apart from the odd ones that you highlight for being a little bit not on the right side?
Uh, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, that's right. Sometimes yeah, even the ones on the right side aren't always on the right side, are they? So yeah.
They just, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I realised I might venture into spoiler territory again. Then I don't want to get there. Um, do you have a favourite character out of the book?
Out of this book, we're talking about Giacelli, his sidekick, Irina Giacelli, or possibly Levan Lavelli. There's something about Levan Lavelli I like. Uh, he, he's a guy who gets the job done as well, But his heart's very much in the right place. He's a bit of an old softy, even though he's ex KGB, and there's not many things he won't stoop to, but he's still a bit of an old softy. So I like him. Uh, but if going back across the three books, there was a character I wrote in the first book, No Harm Done, and he was a young gay man, and I was going to have him killed. He was going to be quite an incidental character, and I was going to have him killed off early on. But I liked him, and his character just developed within the book. And lots of people said to me, actually, that was their favourite character, and they liked the way that the Nazi interacted with him, even though it was a kind of awkward relationship. They liked it, and Afto, his name was, and he was one of the favourite characters for a lot of people who read that book, and he's one of my favourite characters out of the three books as well.
I think there's an interesting thing with Raz in that the way he starts, he's very belligerent, isn't he? And very like he's going to go almost like a bull in a china shop and solve everything, whether he upsets people or not. And he doesn't really care if he does upset people.
Yeah,
But then when he comes across people who genuinely need help, like the young gay man or like there's people in this book, he actually is quite sensitive and he picks up on signs before other people do and he will intervene to help
yeah,
people and you kind of see a different side of him.
yeah. Yeah, he probably is quite a sensitive character underneath his kind of brash exterior, and he definitely wants to help, and he hates to think of an underdog being bullied, So he's always on the side of the underdog.
But I think you see that, when you're saying like he'd mellowed, I think you can see that different side to him more in this book
Yeah,
than you have even in the other ones, even when you've seen little hints of it before. It's kind of a bit more,
yeah,
maybe because of the topic and things as well, but it seems a bit more obvious.
and that's probably quite true to life, isn't it? Because you can't go through your whole life being angry with everyone all the time, can you? Not that I'm saying that's what his style was, but people do mellow a bit and think sometimes things go right for people, and the Nazis had some good things going on in his life, which he likes.
But then some of that is impacting on his relationships as well, isn't it, with other people, and that's quite good. And I think that's where you can tell that you've got places to go still with the series because it's book 3, but I still feel like there's a lot we're going to learn about him.
Right, well, that's good. Yeah. So by book 20, we'll be there.
When you come back, next time you come back, we're gonna have to book you in with like different, like someone else. Ask you more questions because I feel like we're not sharing the love of your books with the
I'd,
other chat.
I'd love to come back anytime, Caroline. Anytime you can
You are welcome
spare
back
the time.
anytime.
Yeah.
I mean, you're welcome back to talk to me anytime as well because I really enjoy reading the book.
Right.
But I feel like I'm just jealously keeping them to myself because I like reading them.
No, don't keep it to
Yeah.
yourself.
No, no, we need to. Well, we need to spread love. But I think there. Have you noticed? Do you read your reviews?
Oh,
Has it
yeah,
come in you saying you'd listen to the feedback? Do you read all the reviews, or do you just?
yeah, I do read all the reviews, and I've actually had some great feedback lately. I sound like a real braggart here, but I'm going to tell you anyway. But let's see if we get the story straight. So, somebody was up in Shetland Noir, and I was up there on a panel and I was talking about crimes on distant shores, which is Georgia in my case, but there's other people on the panel talking about their crimes on distant shores. But there was a young woman up there. I didn't meet her, but she worked for Creative Scotland, and she came back and she was talking to a friend of mine, John, and she was saying, I was up in Shetland, I was at the Shetland North thing, and I always wanted to write a book, but I've never really been that confident in doing it. But there was somebody up there, and he used the word inspirational. It was inspirational, and I think he lives in Stirling. And my pal John says, that sounds like my friend Al. Is it A J Liddle? Says, that's who it was. So I thought, oh, that's that sounds terribly boastful of me to tell you that story, but I was just really quite chuffed about that. Yeah, I think it's the first time I've been described as inspirational, but I was happy to accept that.
That's a brilliant story.
It is a good story, isn't it?
It's a really good story.
Yeah,
Were you sort of talking about your route into publication? Does that inspire her to write? I mean,
yeah,
that's
I
amazing
think
if
so.
someone writes a book
Yeah.
because you inspired them.
I think it's partly because I came to it late in life, when I retired from BP. So I'm 66 now, so I started writing 4 years ago. So that's quite late to be starting, but it just shows you anybody can do it anytime.
Do you have a bit of a fan base developing now? You know, because you've got 3 books out. Do you have people who come back to you and ask you for when the next one is?
Yeah, yeah,
To
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I get a lot of that actually. They read the book and they ask me when the next one's coming out, and I say, well, probably about a year. But no, I do. There is a bit of a fan base, which I'm very happy with, obviously, and that's really why I write. I write for my own satisfaction, and but if other people read the books and they enjoy them and they get something out of it, then that just makes me very happy.
So if someone came along and televised these, which I mean they would make great TV, but if someone came along and televised them, um, who would you play?
Who would I play?
Yeah.
Right, okay. I would probably play the Colonel. The Colonel. He's the Nazis' boss. He's a tall guy like me. I'm 6'3", and he probably looks a bit like me actually, except I don't shave my head. But I would play him. He's quite a cold kind of character, but not that I'm cold, but that's the sort of character I would play. But I know somebody who would love to play Levan Glavelli, the old KGB policeman. He actually said that to me. I wish they make it into a TV series, Netflix series, and I want to play Levan Glavelli.
It would make a great series of TV. And I mean, people look to film things in interesting locations, don't they? Like, you've
Yeah,
sort of got that.
uh, Georgia would be a great set of locations for a series like that. It's got everything. It's got the old ancient buildings which go back. The churches go back to the 4th century. It's got all the horrible Soviet buildings, these horrible apartment blocks which you'll find in any part of the former USSR. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. It's got the kind of rural settings and mountainous settings. So it really would make a great backdrop for a TV series.
You have quite a rural setting in it, don't you? Like when they go out, there's like one of them.
Yeah, if you leave Tbilisi, it's like going back in time. You'll see horses and carts, and farm animals just wandering about on the roads, and the cows just wander out of people's gardens, and then they take themselves home in the evening. And it's strange because Tbilisi itself is pretty cosmopolitan. If you just stayed there, you would get a totally different, inaccurate impression of what the country is.
Do they still? When I lived in Turkey, there were still villages where they would sell like a washing machine to the village, and it'd still have a mangle on top.
Oh yeah.
They could like run those up. You still get places like that in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's strange. An example of culture and different ways of thinking. A quick story here is that there was a village I used to drive through, and by the side of the road, the women, they used to make this sweetbread in old oil barrels. They'd light a fire under this oil barrel, and they'd stick this sweetbread to the side of the oil, what used to be an oil barrel, and they'd make it, and it was lovely. It was delicious. But I tried to count them once, and there was over 100 of these women with their oil barrels. And I said to one of my Georgian friends, well, I said it to 2 or 3 of my Georgian friends to see if I could get a different answer. Says, why doesn't somebody sell fruit? Why doesn't somebody sell drinks? You could put a meal together. And they kind of looked at me strangely and say, well, that's what they make here. She really didn't understand the question. That's what they make here. So who's right and who's wrong, I don't know. But it just shows you cultures are different, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. We have 2 minutes left.
Oh,
Have you got a copy of No Rules Apply to show people
by
what we're going to go and buy?
lucky coincidence, I do. I love this cover, by the way. This is cover made by the same, designed by the same guy, Mark Reed. I think this is the best one he's done. I love
They have
it.
quite striking covers, don't they, the books? Have you got any of the other ones?
Yeah. Have you got? Could I just dig one to get out for you? Just take me a minute.
Don't do it.
No harm done there. Thank you. So that is the first one. No harm done. You can see the little bloody Scotland motif there, which is shortlisted for the debut prize, and that was the second one. No Way Back. You see, it's a similar theme, but they're all different and great. They're great cover designs. Wish I had that talent. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, they're really good cover designs. And then it's all that's left to say thank you.
Oh no, thank you, Caroline. That was absolutely brilliant. And thanks to everybody who signed on.
Yeah, we had quite a few. There were some other hellos later on. Leslie had said hello.
Oh, hi, Leslie.
Well, I missed some of them because I was asking you, having too much fun asking you questions.
Well, I enjoyed your questions and enjoyed speaking to you, as I always do. So thank you very much.
Laura says she's very interested in the books as they're set in a different place. Laura, they're all on Kindle Unlimited, I think, as well, aren't they?
Just the third one, Unlimited. They're all on Kindle, yes.
Yeah, go and have a look. They're very good.
Yeah. Amazon.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. Thank you.